On this video, I'm going to help you go through the reproductive models that we have to make sure that you can understand where certain structures are. So we're going to start off as the book does with the male reproductive system, and we have two styles of models. This first one you see is a little bit larger and in some ways a little bit easier to find things on. So we'll go ahead and get started with what we can see with it intact, and then I'll open it up for the structures that we need to. So down here where I'm pointing, this structure right here, this reveals about half of one of the testes for the male. It would normally continue on through here, but about half of it's exposed. So this is where it's positioned, descended down off of the body in the scrotum, and typically oval in shape. So this is one of the testes, and coiled around it here, again only about half of it, is the structure known as the epididymis. So testis where sperm are made, and the epididymis is where the sperm go to be stored and mature. Housing both of those structures, as well as the two on the other side, would be this structure here, the scrotum, which is a pouch that holds the testes and epididymi a little bit away from the body so that the temperature is a little bit lower than body temperature, which is adequate for sperm production. So scrotum, testis, and epididymis. Then here we see this long tube ascending up, going deep around the bladder toward the back. This is the ductus deferens in this book, or also known as the vas deferens, and this would be the route that sperm travel when they're ejaculated. There would be one on the other side as well, coming from the other testis and epididymis. So that's what this structure is here. And as we get toward the back of the bladder, which is this large structure here, we start to see it go inside, away from our view, and pass by the first set of glands. This lumpy structure here at the back of the bladder is our seminal vesicle on the left side, and there would be one on the right side as well. So seminal vesicle here. And then the last thing we can kind of see from the outside would be the presence of this prostate gland. It's a single gland located beneath the bladder, wrapped around the urethra. So I'm going to open this up so we can see the rest of the structures that you need to know. So we'll take this left half off and get a nice sagittal view of that male reproductive system. Again, this large chamber here is the bladder. Here is the prostate gland. It's been sectioned, this sort of red ball here. And then this tube, continuing from the bladder all the way through the penis and out, that's the urethra, which is a subject also in the urinary system for the male. And if you can see this little spur of a tube right here in the prostate, that's sort of where the ductus deferens has passed the seminal vesicles, and is now they're joining and coming into the urethra to use that tube for ejaculation. This little spur here is known as the ejaculatory duct, right there. So then we're in the urethra. Now there's one more gland called the bulbourethral gland, and on this model it's not represented very well. It typically sits like a little teardrop right here beneath the prostate, but it's not really showing up well. It will on the other version. So as the urethra descends and heads to the outside, it becomes surrounded by, you can see it's kind of red on this model, this red tissue here. And this is the corpus spongiosum, erectile tissue of the male. Corpus spongiosum, that surrounds the urethra and also fills up the interior of the head of the penis, known as the glans, out here. The other type of erectile tissue comes in two chambers, though we only see one because of the cut. This represents this gray under the corpus cavernosum. And like I said, there's two chambers of that, and they're more on the top part of the penis. So when we have it open like this, and arrows or stickers or whatever is indicating these specific regions, then you'd be looking for one of the erectile tissues. But if it's back and intact like this, and an arrow or something is indicating the structure here, then that would indicate the penis or the glands of the penis. So kind of an external description versus internal description. So I'm going to switch to the other style of the male model in just a second so you can see it. These are the ones that go along with our torso models. So let me see if I can get this positioned correctly. I'm going to turn this one a little bit, and it is missing at this time the penis, which is right here. It's missing the pegs that hold it on there. So I'm going to set this down for just a second and just go through this. This side has been exposed a little bit more on this model. So here we are again with a testis right here, that oval. Here's the epididymis coiled around it like the letter C a little bit. And then the scrotum has been removed, but you can see the back end of it here, this flesh-colored tissue. That's the pouch that houses it. I'll turn it back just a little bit. The ductus deferens is hidden for a little while in here, but it does come up and ascend and go around the bladder. I'm going to turn this so you can see it coming out of both sides. Here's our top view. Here's a ductus deferens, and here's the other one right here. So here's the large bladder in the male. So that was our ductus deferens. Working our way down around to the back here of the bladder. This lumpy part again is the seminal vesicle. And here we've got the prostate gland. Again, kind of a round ball underneath the bladder. I'm going to open this up. See if we can get that to stay. Probably not. So I'm going to hold this. Sorry, this is so jerky. But here's the prostate again, right here. And there's the little ejaculatory duct. And this is that bulbourethral gland we couldn't see very well on the other model. Right there, that teardrop. Then you've got the urethra. That tube all the way through. Beginning of the corpus spongiosum. Beginning of the corpus cavernosa. Right here. And then to complete the story, just hold this in place like that. So there you can see the continuation of the urethra through the penis with the erectile tissue as well. So that takes care of the male reproductive system. Now let's take a look at the female and the two models that demonstrate that. Alright, so here's the female reproductive model, the larger version. This one's a little tougher, I always think, to make out what's being shown here. So I'm actually going to lift the phone up, the camera. We're going to take a look here at a little bit of a raised view like this. And what we see in here, you see those yellow kind of ovals here and here as well? Those are the ovaries where egg cells develop and are produced in the ovaries. There's a left, and then this is the right ovary. Positioned around it are these finger-like extensions known as the fimbriae, here as well as here. And then the tube leading from those down to the uterus here. This is the uterine tube right there, coming from the fimbriae, as well as this tube right here. Uterine tubes. You might be used to calling them fallopian tubes. In some organisms, they're called oviducts as well. This is the uterus, this large structure, and there's the bladder underneath it. This is the uterus, and then one other thing we can see from this view is the presence of the ovarian ligament, which is right here. So remember, to tell the difference between these two similar structures, the uterine tube actually is hollow and comes from the fimbriae. So that's how you can tell. And over here, there's the ovarian ligament, and this one is the uterine tube coming from the fimbriae. So then back to the uterus. Go ahead and set this back up again. Take a look at our sagittal view. This is a lot more familiar from how you might have studied it in the textbook. So here's the uterus right here. It's hollow inside. The cervix of the uterus is this little narrow opening, not that white circle. That's just where the other half uses a peg to poke in there to stay on. But this is the cervix of the uterus, this narrow neck region right in here. This hollow tube leading outside is the vagina, and you can see it's lined with rugae or ridges. So that's the vagina or the birth canal. Just for reference, here's the bladder, and there's the female urethra right there for carrying urine out of the body. And then the structures found more externally on the female are collectively known as the vulva, and they include 3 different types of structures. There's a fold of tissue that's rather larger here to the outside of the vaginal and urethral opening. This right here would be the labia majus. Inside of that is a set of folds a little bit smaller, known as the labia minus. And then this little piece right in here is erectile tissue, just like in the male, known as the clitoris or the clitoris. So together, those make up the structure known as the vulva. So what I'd like to do is then use that other model to make sure you understand the structures there as well. Alright, so here's kind of that overhead view that helps with the ovaries and the tubes. So just to get oriented, this is the uterus, and there's the bladder. And then as I turn this a little bit, there you can see one of the ovaries over there. If I turn it here, there's the other ovary right there. The fimbriae are those finger-like projections that sort of caress the ovary when it releases the egg. And then here we have a uterine tube. Here we have the other uterine tube right through here. And then here, a little harder to see, but there we have the ovarian ligament, as well as the other ovarian ligament right there. Then the uterus is here, and if we open this up, it's very similar to the last model then. Here we have the uterus, the cervix, the vagina, urinary bladder and urethra, and then down below we have the labia majus, labia minus, and the clitoris right here. And those are all the structures you need to know for the reproductive systems. I hope that helped.